Oh, hello, we're back live. Live. Okay. Um, so I'm going to answer some third culture questions that have been coming up. So let me first answer. What's the hardest part about being third culture? I think you notice it. You notice it a lot in certain situations. Like, I think one of the reasons why it struck such a chord with me so early on was when I became an actor. Um, I had to I had to identify what I was, because I think when you travel or whatever, and you have to like tick boxes, and you have to fill in what am I? Am I Western? Am I Asian? That kind of stuff that comes up, but it's not really a crisis of your identity. And you might meet people and maybe they're racist or things like that, but you just think, oh, I'm just going through something, I'm racist. Maybe like their words linger and it makes you think stuff. But I think as an actor, I really had to think about it because I was thinking, well, what can I play? And then like, well, how do I? That was the first time I was thinking like, not just what am I, but how do I appear? And that's a big topic right now. It's how are you? Because you could be 50-50. Let's say you're Asian, Western, Wasian as they say nowadays. Eurasian back in my day, and you could be more European looking. Um, you could be more Western looking, or you could be more Asian looking. And so back in the day, being more Western looking was an advantage because you could assimilate better, you could fit in better into certain groups. Um, but then when it comes to the acting world, um, that's when you weren't like enough, and it would really help you if you looked more Asian, especially nowadays. Um, Nowadays they do have, I just watched season 2 of Beef, and um, Charles Melton. I need to make sure I get his name right. Fantastic actor. Yeah, Charles Melton. Fantastic, really good looking actor. He's I think he's Korean and American. I'm not sure what his other background is. I think he's just American. I'm not sure if he's British, but yeah, he's fantastic. And then I think that role was cast. Nowadays they're casting for mixed race ones, so you can play yourself finally. But that's an interesting one. Um, when it comes to things like funding, when it came to like funding films or applying for grants or um, you know ticking that kind of box, being mixed race is a lot harder because I feel like the pure breeds get more of the support. Um, you get a lot of the being mixed race, being third culture. You get a lot of the negatives, not a lot of the positives. You get a lot of the you know you're so privileged because you're Western appearing, and so you know you shouldn't get these benefits because you're so privileged, but then you don't get any of the you know um, support because you're not Asian enough. I don't know. I think things are changing. I think they go back and forth. Again, my solution always to this was that you have to make your own stuff. You have to find your own people, and that's when I first came. That's when I first started my third culture journey. Was I was in the desert doing a Jackie Chan movie called oh my gosh, how embarrassing! This has been so long now, and I'm tired. Forgive me. Um, Dragon Blade. Oh gosh, what's wrong with me? So I was in the desert doing Dragon Blade, and I was thinking like, who are my people? Who's my demographic? Who's my support group? And I was like, oh, I don't feel enough for the Westerns. I don't feel enough for the Asians. So I'm like in this in between, and it's cool. It's cool seeing it being popular. It's still very divided, and I think one of the things is that because it's so personal, there is no right answer, and there's so many personal feelings towards it, because you have some people that have very strong agendas, some people that want to gatekeep. So being third culture is very complicated. It is a challenge, I think, and that's what the hardest thing is. Yeah. And then there's some basic ones, different sense of humor. Comedy, I think, is really tough to translate. I love Canto humor. I think that Stephen Chow is one of the greatest comedian filmmakers of all time. And that's very different to like British humor, but I love both, but they, you code switch. Yeah. So next. I think we kind of covered when did I first realize I was different. Growing up in Hong Kong, I didn't notice it at all. I went to boarding school when I was 9. And I think that's the first time I was kind of aware of it, because my dad being English Kiwi, it felt I was like going home. It felt like this was something that he always wanted for me. He wanted me to have a tie to my English heritage. And so it was like, oh, it's like you're entering into like your birthright. But then you get there and you're like, no, you're a foreigner. No, you're different. No, and that was quite difficult. It was a huge, huge culture shock coming from Hong Kong, being so close to family, to then being literally in the middle of nowhere in one of the last all boys Catholic boarding schools in the world. Where I hadn't really slept over at friends' houses, and now I'm in a dorm with 6 people, was my first dorm. And there were like dorm raids. I thought I was going to be killed. So like it was like huge culture shock. But the thing that made it trickier and made me realize I was different was there were other foreigners, there were other Asian boys, and I wasn't welcome with them either. There were boys from Hong Kong, and they were Chinese, and I wasn't welcome with them because my Chinese wasn't good enough. I wasn't Chinese. There were Koreans, and people just lump you together and they go, all these are Asians. Hong Kong is completely different from Korea, but I'm not going to call them racist, but not to. And the thing is, they were just boys, and even some of the teachers were ignorant. But like, you do, when you're in a boarding school alone for the first time, it does make you think like that, and it really helped that feeling of isolation. Realizing you were different from such an early age. And it's not like Harry Potter different, like you feel special. No, this is like you just don't recognize anything. No one's in your boat. It was tricky because there were other mixed race people, but they just didn't get sent to my school. I talked about it with my parents later. Where did the other mixies go? Where are my other friends that went to boarding school? Where did they go? And then there was even like timing differences. I got sent when I was 9. Most people get sent when they're like 13. So yeah, that's the answer to that one. Can you belong to a culture you didn't fully grow up in? So I talked about this on the last live stream. I talked about it when this is something that the more you talk to people, the more third culture people you talk to, the more you have an answer to this. And you can't, people have lived experiences, and like I said, people try to gatekeep this, but I genuinely believe that you can be fully immersed and belong to a culture that you weren't born into, like genetically, like ethnically. You have like, you know, yeah, there's so many, and people are adopted now, and adopted, different ethnicities, and they're adopted, and they grow up with that, and that's fully their culture. I remember, and I get really upset when I remember Aquafina was being judged for having an American accent, but I'm like, the girl's a New Yorker, and they were like, oh, Chinese with an American accent. Or even there's like, the girl that played Cho Chang in Harry Potter, she's got a Scottish accent. There's so many Asians, like full on Asians with Scottish accents, it's amazing to hear. It's amazing to see. And they have these full, they love the country that they're part of. And I think this is a really, really interesting nuance, because it is the difference between immigrating somewhere and not wanting to belong, or not wanting to assimilate, or not be wanting to be part of that culture, and doing that. And so there's a big difference, and we can't do it as groups. We can't do it as like blanket statements. We can't do it as like, all immigrants are bad, or immigrants from this region is bad, because it is literally up to an individual if they are able to assimilate or not. Now there's loads of ways that you can encourage that and help that, or stop that when someone's coming over and they don't want to be part of that culture at all. That's a decision that the country or the people there have to make. If they're like, look, these people are coming over, it's purely economical, they don't care about us, but they want to invest in the region, and then they're going to go, right? That's what an expat is. That they're there for a set time, and then they're off. What about people that want to lay roots, and then so a foreign person wants to come over into your culture, and they don't care about your culture and actively want to maybe destroy it, even though they want to live in that land. Like, I think that is a root cause for a lot of problems, because you're fracturing that society. You're causing, which is in the name of multiculturalism, is great, but the thing is, like, these cultures are now separate, and they're not assimilating, and especially the more opposed they are, it's like, how are they meant to coexist? Now, depending on that society, the foundations for coexisting can vary greatly. For example, if there's a society that's open to multiculturalism and is based on like values and humanitarian values and people getting along, and we want to function as a society, and these are the rules, as long as you adhere to them, then blah blah blah. But you can have societies that are just like no, this is the way, and if you don't adhere to it, then you're out. And I think one of the things, and we talked about this last live stream, one of the things that's so upsetting about the West is the West has been so attacked for colonialism and things like that, that they're beaten into, not just, that's why it's interesting, comes with like white guilt, but it's like, it's Western. So then you're going to make Western civilization guilt. So they should just be open up to the rest of the world. It's a very sensitive subject, and it needs to be dealt with head on, but tactfully, carefully, respectfully, because people should be dealt with as individuals, and rules should be set. And the more you travel, the more you experience, the more you study, the more you see that Some places are much better at preserving their culture and protecting their people than others, and that's because they put certain rules in place and they put certain boundaries. So yeah, super interesting conversation. And that's again something that if you're into, I'd love to have that conversation with you. There's some people that massively disagree with me and they think multiculturalism is the best, and they do it blindly. And I would just say, I'm happy to debate you, and we can definitely. I would say read more, learn more, travel more, see what other countries do, see the results of things happening. Um, Yeah. So going back to the question, like, can you belong to a culture you didn't fully grow up in? Uh, Culture isn't straightforward. It's culture is a language. It's in your blood. Again, it varies from place to place. If you belong somewhere based on your blood or based on your birth, like, do you have birthright? Um, is it your family? Is it your contribution to a place? Is it your affinity to a place? And yeah, I go. Yeah, I talked about the play that I wrote last time. I won't go on to it just in case someone does steal it. Um, and it's interesting too because this applies to me. Is like it's been instilled in me to be very proud of New Zealand. And before COVID, I'd never lived here for a big chunk of time, and now it's home. But even before I called it home, I was always very proud to be a New Zealander, even though I wasn't born here, even though my father wasn't born here. I'm fifth generation, and the like story of my family was told to me and embodied in me from the day that I was born. It's literally in my name. I'm Matthew Henry the Fifth, and the Matthew Henrys before me are all Kiwi. So I felt like I belonged there, even though I wasn't born there, and I didn't even call it home yet. Um, and then if someone tells me that I'm not, then sure, that's your opinion. But I've got a passport, and now I call it. I got a passport from the day I was born, and I didn't have it from the day I was born, but I was entitled to one. Um, the thing is, like, you can be from a place and not like its culture, and then you can be a guest in a place and love it. So who does the culture belong to? This is the third culture mindset. This is the third culture questions that we have to ask. You know, who would inherit it? Who inherits it? Who carries it forward to the next generation? Is it a surname, a grandparent? Is it in the food that you eat, the stories you tell? Is it in the music that you like, that you pass on, that you evolve? Is it a feeling you can't fully explain? And I think this is where people get uncomfortable because they treat an identity when they treat it like it's like a purity test. Go, okay, well, what's your percentage? How many of your grandparents are this? And then they determine if you qualify or not based on a percentage. What if you 100% fully qualify, but you feel no affinity, no loyalty, no love for it, and you're not going to pass it on? How do you qualify more than someone that's half it, a quarter it, but champions it? Nowadays, the world's becoming more mixed, so we have to start looking at these and the nuances of these. We are becoming not more mixed in terms of like our populations, but also our genetics, our ethnicities, our heritages. And that's why I have no time for cultural appropriation talk. I have no time for gatekeepers because you shut down conversations. You shut down the ability to learn, to share. um, to cohabit. Next, we're getting through these kind of. Of the mixed race people, why do so many of them feel like outsiders? I would say more third culture people, more mixed race people feel more like outsiders than it's their like superpower. And I think it's because I think it's human nature to be tribal. I think it's human nature to want to categorize people. That's why, like, when you think about the first few questions people ask you, people are inclined to be like, because the thing is, like, people, I think it's natural. People will try to assess you as like in terms of like pattern recognition, so they can know what to talk about, what even like from a safety point of view, is this dangerous or not? And that's not by your skin color. It could be your job. It could be what you wear. It could be your attitude. All of these things. And so I think it's natural to, when you get into a conversation with people, they ask you like, what do you do? They ask you, where are you from? And then, when they're complex, when it's complex and you're like, oh, I'm, and you obviously don't look from here, if you're non-white in a white country and you say I'm from here, and then you're like, where are you really from? Where are your parents from? Because they just, I think it's human nature, and I don't think it's rude, and I don't think people should. I prefer people to ask and have these conversations out in the open than have like passive racism. It was kind of like at school and old comedy where you'd have racist jokes and everyone can get on when they're all racist to each other, and it kind of just put it on the table, rather than like this hidden racism where it's like people think it but then they're not saying it, and then that's like genuine racism, because then it comes out in their actions, or it comes out in their behavior some other way. Yeah, I think it's natural. So I think a lot of people then, because it's not easy to answer, feel like it's a negative, and they feel like an outsider because there's not many people that will then fit into their group. I think it's a rare thing that people feel. That's what I mean. The characteristic where you feel like it's your superpower is because of you as an individual, rather than being mixed race. I like coming from a mixed race place. I do think being mixed race does give you superpowers. I do think it like teaches you stuff like code switching, being able to adapt, being able to like be more fluid in your character and how you approach people, because you learn these things naturally. You're much more open minded. You're much more likely to seek the middle ground. Because like that's what happened in your household. You have parents that can speak different languages. So what is the you know a lot of their culture, people, mixed race people, speak two languages, have two different cultures, so they're learn to prioritize. But then you will naturally prioritize one culture, but you will be very sympathetic and embracing of another. So these are all superpowers, but where does it come out? And I think people then become translators. Hopefully they become leaders, and they can see it as superpowers, but it must be unlocked in the individual first. But yeah, I think this is all leadership material, where you can be a bridge, you can be a unifier, you can problem solve, you can unite people, unite different people. Yeah, it's just the same stuff. Sometimes you can be too Asian, sometimes you can be too white. So yeah, I think it's very natural for mixed race people to feel like that. Okay, let's do the classic. What does home mean to you? So let's just do me personally, for those of you who don't know me. I was born in Hong Kong. My mother was born in Hong Kong, but she's Filipino. And I think we have some Spanish heritage on that side. And then my dad was born in England, but as I mentioned, he is Kiwi lineage. But then on his mum's side, there's also like some Scottish and stuff like that. So Western dad, Asian mom. They call it Wasian nowadays. They called it Eurasian back in my day. Third culture is the overall umbrella. This is how I see it, and reading a lot of stuff. And these are still very fluid terms. Look, like Wasian is a new one, but third culture is the umbrella because third culture applies to like a mindset, not in your blood. Like I think you have expats, you have adopted people that have become so third culture because they can't go back home without feeling like strangers in their original land because they've been so affected. Um, you can have, and they can have kids, which is where the term third culture kid first came from. You can be Western parents having a kid outside your culture, and they belong to this new culture by birthright, but they might not fit in there ethnically. They don't fit in home either. So third culture is the ultimate umbrella. Then you can have specific terms. Um, Gosh, who's that comedian? I think it was Russell. Yeah, it was Russell Peters. Like if you want to look at one of the classic like third culture comedians, you go to Russell Peters. And gosh, he does so many like not racist jokes at all, but he touches on race so much in such a like fun, playful way. Um, he'd say what happens when Iceland has a baby with a Cuban little ice cubes, like those jokes. Russell Peters is a legend. Um, so check him out if you've not heard of him. Check out his like old stand-ups. It might be unbearable to watch for people so used to HD, but yeah, one of the great for me third culture comedians. Um, yeah, because you have people like Joe Coy's a great one for me. I've been to his stuff live, but he's Filipino, and so he does nuances targeting like Filipino stuff. Russell Peters was so great at just hitting all of them. And I think he was Canadian, so Canada, very interesting multicultural place. Um, yeah. So for me, where's home? Hong Kong will always have a major part of my home, not just because I grew up there and my family's there. I still have family there, but then I went back to live there in my 20s. Um, but it's also shaped so much of my identity in terms of like values. And like I can always be around Cantonese people and feel like I'm back home. Um, Whereas like English people, there's such a wide range of English people. You have northern and southerners depending on what part of England you're from, different accents. Um, Whereas like Cantonese Hong Kong is like a shared identity by like a ton of people. Um, and I think that's what makes Hong Kong so unique as well. It's just so many people in such a small location, so we really have this like shared experience, this shared identity of being a Hong Konger. Although that can come through like different lenses, whether you're an expat or whatever. But um, but I think we will all get a taste of it. So Hong Kong will always have part of that. I think when I was younger, I would frame it differently, and I would ask myself, if I were to die for a country, what would it be? And again, going back to like heritage and what was like bred into me, like New Zealand was always a country where I was told like, kid, this is the one that you fight for. Um, yeah, it's tough because Hong Kong, Hong Kong, they call it. But although I was born there, am I like fully welcome there? What was I fully welcome in the UK? No. Am I fully welcome in New Zealand? Like kind of, but I think in New Zealand's like the only one where I feel like I would gladly debate you on my rights to New Zealand. Like the UK, it's like slightly different. Yeah, I went to school there, but I wasn't born there. And you know, do you get to earn more by living a place longer? I don't know. Is it like the quality? Is it the amount of years? Is it formative years? You know. So then America, because America had such a massive impact on me, and I still, I love American values. I love a lot of about American culture. So yeah, it's tricky. I think home for me then for always in my life. Like it's a tough question, but home would always be where my family is, my immediate family is, um, and you just make it work. But now that I have kids, home is New Zealand because it's my kids' home, and they are very much little Kiwis. Um, so that makes that bit easier having kids now. All right, on to a sensitive one: gatekeeping. Okay, because who decides if somebody is Asian enough? I got this a lot in Philippines, not so much in Hong Kong, I guess, because I had big claims to Hong Kong, being born there. Although my Cantonese is rubbish and my Mandarin slightly better, but it's still pretty rubbish. My Tagalog is non-existent except for like swear words. Gatekeepers. Yeah. I remember in Philippines. I think it was after I did a movie. I was fortunate enough to be in an article, and I remember the article was posted online, and I remember reading the comments, and it was like, "Oh, another mixed race Filipino, like trying to claim a fan base when they don't belong," something like that. And the more people you encounter, the more you feel. There's a lot of people that feel like this. There's a lot of people. I think there's a lot of mixed race Filipinos that don't speak Tagalog, or they don't speak enough Tagalog, and they feel, or they're made to feel ashamed. Um, maybe they're not even. Maybe they're less than a half, and they don't feel like they can explore that part of their identity because there's like a shame that comes with it, because it's like, well, why don't you know, or you're not enough of it to belong to it, which is crazy because the identity of Philippines is so mixed anyway. I think there is, to be honest, if we're going to talk about sensitive subjects, to be honest, there's a natural historical reason for that because of the rough history that Philippines has been through with Spanish colonizers, with issues with America, issues with other countries, um, that have treated Philippines absolutely terribly. So perhaps that comes out in their DNA. But yeah, I'm third culture mindset. My personal stance on it is even if you don't have the DNA, I feel like if you love a culture, if you're going to uphold its values, and I don't think anyone has the right, especially if it's in your ethnicity, if it's in your DNA, nobody has the right to tell you you're not enough of something. No one has the right to make you feel embarrassed to explore your heritage, your ancestors, the culture of your ancestors. Um, I think that's really, I'm not going to say shameful, but it's just really disappointing. It's really sad to see. It's really hurtful for the people who are exploring their identity. It's really hurtful for people who are exploring their passion. If it's not their identity, but it's their passion, might not have a reason for it. They can't fully explain it if they're drawn to something, and then someone says, "No, you can't explore this." So what happens then? Is it not the same with love? What if I am from another place, but I fall in love with someone from another place and their culture, and they embody this culture? Am I not allowed to love them? because that opens up a whole other conversation, right? Because that person should marry someone of their culture, because I don't understand it, because I'm not from there, because it's not in my DNA. And there's so many movies, so many stories about this. That's why I think third culture people are the bridge. Super interesting conversations, super interesting stories. Yeah, we touched on, do you need to speak the language to belong? I think, though, that speaking a language unlocks a lot of stuff. It shows your desire to understand a people, and a people's thinking, a people's history is embedded in its language. And so when you study it and you can speak it, you have a window, you're into a deeper layer. I think language is amazing for that. And that's why I love it. I love it when, like, I love that my my daughter is like accidentally singing in Korean because of K-pop Demon Hunter. You know, I love I love how many Westerners can sing some Cantonese songs. Some of them can sing the whole song and not fully understand what it means. Um, I think it's awesome. I think it's an awesome segue into a culture, into a people, into appreciation. That's why it's so important that it should be shared. Like like who who denies like just this straight up question: who denies somebody learning another language? Who says you can't learn this language because it's mine? Who does that? So then why do they do it with other aspects of their culture? Why do they do it with other aspects of the culture when it's a window into culture and it's a window into building bridges? And it's perhaps it's potentially dangerous with there's two sides of it. With AI and tech getting better, you know, it's fantastic because translations can be made in real time and made effectively, so we can cross language barriers. But will people be less inclined to learn, to delve fully into a language, into a people's culture and history that comes with a language? Interesting. Appreciation and appropriation. I feel we dealt with this. I don't want to get into that again. Why are people so obsessed with racial purity online? So we dealt with just briefly, right? Because they're big subjects, but like, why is it that people are so obsessed with racial purity? Like I talked a bit about Philippines, but I think it's human nature. It's human nature to seek racial purity because I think it's encoded in our, like, the survival of your people, right? Because we're all mortal, we're gonna die. So how are we gonna continue our bloodline, our values? It's because I know that this tribe here share it, and I can recognize it because we have the same ethnicity, right? The same history, the same identity, especially back in the day before like travel and stuff like that. But that's why throughout history, when you see people mixing, that subject comes up, right? Can this group of people marry this group of people? Because if they do, it will come with a consequence. It comes with the question of, well, what happens to the values, right? What happens to the culture? What happens to the language? And so usually when it happens, right, it's usually one culture absorbing another, right? And it's like, we're gonna intermarry with you, but we're not gonna absorb your culture too. Um, just off the top of my head, I think one of the interesting ones of assimilation was like the Roman Empire. The Romans would conquer a people and they'd be like the one of the reasons why the Roman Empire was able to grow so quickly was because they were good at assimilating, because they didn't go, our gods are superior to your gods, you now have to adopt it. They went, our gods, oh, they're the same as your gods, it's just by a different name, right? And we're gonna like let you keep a lot of your stuff as long as you just submit to the emperor or submit to the Roman way. And and the people that caused a lot of problems because they didn't want to assimilate, they had to get rid of. And a good example of that was the Druids in the UK. Super interesting. I'm not trying to give you a history lesson, but it's super interesting. This is off the top of my head. I haven't studied this for a while. This is not rehearsed, but off the top of my head, the Druids were such an interesting class of people because they had influence over kings, and it was a oral tradition. So their knowledge and their wisdom was passed down orally, not written. So to become a druid was like a way of life, and that did not mix at all with the Romans, and so they couldn't absorb them, so they had to get rid of them. Again, these lessons, the more you study, the more you see people have tried different things, and you can see how it turns out because of human nature. The more things happen, like the more patterns you see, you like the more it's just the more you study, the more you read, the more people you encounter, you start to see there's things embedded in human nature. Now we're definitely in a new period for humanity because we've never had a time where travel is so easy, where immigration has happened so much, that we are now asking questions that have never been asked in this way, where cultures could be lost, not through war, not through conquering, but just through the lack of preservation, through you know, heavy multiculturalism, and things just get washed away in the name of democracy, in the name of numbers, in the name of things not caring. Because you look at I think we talked about this last time. Like, look what happened to to languages that die. Look at Latin. Latin is arguably a dead language, but yet people know how to speak it, and people speak it because they're interested in it. And the people that speak it have probably had no tie to it because it's been dead for so long. Can it be revived if people people, if there was enough people that sat down in stone and said, this is how our primary form of communication, boom, it would be alive again. So we have to ask ourselves, people have to ask ourselves in their different societies and their groups, how are we going to preserve our culture? What parts of our culture do we want to preserve, and who is going to preserve it? Right? Because back in the day, that was preserved through tribal lines, through ethnic lines, and marriage interbreeding was a huge threat to that because there was no guarantee that it would continue. Right? So the safest way is keep it culture, keep it in your tribe, keep it in your people. Right? And that's why it's so interesting, because it's literally not that long ago, and it happens in a lot of countries still, that mixed race people are seen as problematic because you are the offspring of two people that intermarried. And what are you going to represent now? Whose culture are you going to continue? Whose values are you going to continue? Which side are you on? And that's why I feel like, it's inherent that you don't feel it. Now, majority of people maybe are just like, just trying to get on with my life, just trying to pay rent, just trying to get my job, just trying to, go to work, just trying to find someone to love, to settle down, to have kids. I'm bothered with my day to day. I'm not worried about cultural values and stuff like that. Like, you can say that, but the thing is, like, it's there. It's there in the politics. It's there in our culture, in like the food, the music, the everything. It's there whether you realize it or not. Um, and again, I think if you travel, you become aware of it more. Um, and it's gonna come up more and more. It's natural. It's natural, and just again, just something basic, but birthright. Let's look at America. In America, you're born in America, you're American. You are entitled, and what does that mean? You're American. You're entitled to vote, right? You're entitled to continue the values of America, but because you can vote, you are a decider on what those values are. You have an ability to contribute on what the future of this people group looks like. Now, they might get rid of that. They might get rid of being born in America means you're American. Totally up to them, right? So if they do that, it is, let's say America was all one ethnicity. Now it moves from whoever's born there to, okay, now the future of the guardians of these values now belong to this ethnicity. That's why you have to be very clear on what a people group are, right? Just because you all live in the same place, are you the same people group? That's why I think it's so problematic when people look at a people group based on ethnicity nowadays, right? Because you can have a multicultural group of people, right? But all be completely united in their values, and that would be a thriving society. You can have the safe, but the thing is, the safest way to do that is to go back to basics, which is your ethnicity. And that's why I feel people, I think it's like, it bubbles up. It goes back to like human nature, pops up the purity test. I go on the weirdest tangents. Can someone be disconnected from their culture and still feel deep loss? I think so. I think so for sure. I mean, there's a saying. What's the saying? Like, you don't miss what you don't know. Or you don't know, you don't miss, something like that. But the thing is like, when it's your DNA, now you might not know what your mix is. That's why there's like this rise as well in like your what's it called, your DNA test, your heritage test. Those are interesting. But yeah, I think it's a natural desire in people to go like, where am I from? Because it's natural to go like, well, why am I here? To answer why you're here, you're curious where you're from. And then where you're from, you think like, okay, well then what's been passed down to me? How did my parents, my ancestors, my guardians, my tribe, what were their values and why? How did they get here? How did they stay here? So I find it very sad when a generation departs so far from the values of their ancestors. Like, we're always going to be evolving, but it's just so sad when a generation is so disrespectful because they didn't have the same information that we do, and to treat them with like a superior attitude is it's just so sad. And I think there's a lot lost there when you can be humble and learn and put yourself in someone's shoes. So you see, some I won't dwell on too much. Yeah, there's someone we're talking about. Your IQ, how intelligent you are, your EQ, how emotionally intelligent you are, and then there's your CQ, which is your cultural intelligence. And I think this is a term that's coming a lot more. And I think third culture people, mixed race people, are develop this naturally. And it's like in a culturally diverse group, how do you navigate that? How do you communicate that? How do you allow people to be themselves and flourish, but without it being a detriment to the group? These are the questions that are being asked more as groups become more diverse culturally, because you cannot go, well, all cultures are the same and everyone should be allowed to be them, because the thing is that you can say, well, it's my culture to behave this way and it's to the detriment to the group, so which side are you going to pick? Because you said everything goes, right? All cultures should be respected equally, and yet now I believe something that's detriment to the group. The example I used before, a safer example to use before was just like, if it's my culture to celebrate bullfighting, it's my history. Maybe my ancestors did it. Maybe directly, like grandfather did it, and you're going to tell me that I'm a bad person or I shouldn't be celebrating it because it makes other people uncomfortable because of how it treats animals. But this is my culture. It's my heritage. It's in my family. So how can you be respectful to that and yet also be respectful to the people that think it's cruel? Then you go, okay, well, then you have to keep it at home and not bring it into the workplace or bring it into the space where there's different groups. I think we have to have these conversations. It's massively uncomfortable, but this is how we can coexist. Is to learn about each other respectfully, and not shut each other down and say, and celebrate cancel culture and say it's cultural appropriation and say it's none of your business. We should embrace making it our business and learning about each other. Okay. Close to an hour. I think that's it. Yeah. Hopefully I get around to doing more of these. I really enjoy it. Love to see more of you live with me, but I gave no warning, so that's fine. Thank you so much. And all the people that commented last one, awesome. Appreciate it so much. Take care.